Gray Matter live stream. I'm really excited about this edition. I'm calling this Catching Up with Chris Scott, the whistle stop edition of the Gray Matter live stream. Chris is a person who's become a friend, at least I would call him that. He might disagree. But we're very happy to have him on the program because he's out there on the front lines talking about a lot of different things that are of great importance and interest to Albertans. So great to have you on the program tonight, Chris.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. And just FYI, yeah, of course I would consider you a friend, Leighton. We don't agree on everything, but that doesn't that for sure would never interfere with what I believe is a valuable friendship.
Right on. So that's good. And actually, the most interesting conversations sometimes are where we disagree. Right?
Right.
Our federal government would not would not agree with that, as you know. But a few sort of housekeeping items before we get going. Firstly, the book, Lies, Laws, and Liberties, which Chris, you will be receiving at the Whistle Stop Cafe shortly. I signed one and sent it there. So
Oh,
if you
thank
need
you.
something to start your Christmas campfire, the Lord has provided. Hopefully, I know that you're a very avid reader, and hopefully you'll find some things in there that are meaningful. We want to thank everybody who's bought the book and who supported this project. It's very important to Gray Matter, and we're excited about the sales so far and by the feedback that we've been getting on it. Also, want to remind people that we have a great interview out this week with Seamus Bruner, who's written a book called Control Oligarchs. These are the people who are controlling basically all of the geopolitical events. And this is part of what Chris Scott is out there talking to Albertans about. And I'm sad to say that in Seamus's book, it stars many Canadians who are considered control oligarchs, including our most recent prime minister. And then also we have our commentary, Dangerous Knowledge, which is getting a lot of traction. Actually, people are really engaging with this, which is about how what happens when scientific ambition tempts mankind to play God. It sort of ties into the Frankenstein theme, the theme of a movie that's very popular right now, the latest edition of in the Frankenstein movie series. I want to also make a special announcement. We signed an agreement with Daystar TV just this week, one of the largest Christian broadcast networks in the United States and Canada. So we'll be broadcasting on that network in January. Very exciting. And my wife and I will be we're being flown down to Dallas for a launch. So it's heady stuff, fun times for Gray Matter, and it's all due to you folks and your support. So with that, I'm going to throw it over to Michael before I just sort of frame this with a biblical verse. I'm drawing from Proverbs tonight, Proverbs 16, verse 3. Before you do anything, put your trust totally in God and not in yourself. Then every plan you make will succeed. So, Michael, I'll throw it over to you and you can maybe tell people how they can support the show and stuff like that.
Yes. Yes. Well, the number one way right now that you can support the show is please share this out on your social media with your friends. Feel free to be a little annoying on a scale of 1 to 10, maybe 30, but send this out to some friends. And so that's step one in our support mission. Of course, we've got the buymeacoffee.com/, Gray Matter podcast. And I guess that the thing about Buy Me a Coffee is it's very easy. You can use your credit card, debit card, things like that, those electronic forms of payment. So buymeacoffee.com/Gray Matter podcast. Every coffee counts, and we do appreciate all those delicious virtual cups of coffee. So thank you for that. And of course, the other component of support that we've been talking about is just helping us get over that the 3,000 hour threshold of watch hours on YouTube. So if you can watch a little bit of extra Gray Matter programming this month and next, we would love to hit that 3,000 hour threshold for the beginning of January. And then, of course, the other thing I want to mention is Leighton Substack. So many of you probably go over there at LeightonGray.substack.com. You can subscribe there. You can find it's really a repository for all of Leighton's stuff. And I know that Leighton's also already plugged his book today, but of course that is available on Amazon. And like Leighton was saying, I echo his thanks for those of you that have bought a copy and a coffee. But just one other little bug in your ear that we mentioned last week, our demographics on YouTube very strongly are weighted towards males 18 to 44. And I don't know if you saw our friend's Nico's post on X today, but he had a clip of some government officials lamenting men are a little too masculine and they're following too many masculine, manly men on the interwebs, if you can believe that. So an antidote to that is to
We
support
must
Grey
stop
Matter.
this immediately.
Yeah. So a little disturbing when your government is lamenting that they've got too many
Oh.
manly men coming up. And I mean, God forbid you want to go to a gym and work out and
Oh.
have some masculine thoughts rolling
That's it
around
for
in
the
your
Old
brain.
Spice commercials, Michael. They're gone.
Mhm.
Hey,
They're gone.
yeah, but they the new ones, they have a girl on there anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway, talking about coffee, the guy in the show today actually serves real coffee. I've heard it's really, really good. So is the food down at the Whistle Stop Cafe. Chris, how are things going at the Whistle Stop Cafe? I was on your website today and I couldn't believe the whole panoply, the catalog of merchandise you have out. You must be making a killing. But how are things
No.
going with the Whistle Stop?
Well, I'm not making a killing. The website, I've started working on that pretty recently. And I've been designing stuff and my sister's helping me put lots of stuff on there. That doesn't mean that it's being sold. It just means that it's there and available. So
Yeah. Well, people
yeah.
should check it out. There's some really nice stuff there.
Yeah, we try.
Yeah. So we were talking right before we came on about the Whistle Stop, and this is an interesting concept because you were explaining how the cafe's been there since 1964. It used to have a different name, but you bought it when it was the Whistle Stop. But where the cafe is located is kind of a really important. It's kind of important place in Alberta history, isn't it?
It is, yeah. The claim to fame is the rail yard we have there. There used to be a big roundhouse, and back in the day of the steam locomotive, this was the hub. Like, if you were doing anything with trains in Alberta, you went through Muir. It was so important that it was considered to be the capital at one point, as were other places as well. But yeah, it used to be quite the booming little town, important little place.
Yeah, I was on recently on a podcast, Sean Newman podcast with John Carpe, who came to Lloydminster for an event, and he told me that he had stopped in and been at the Whistle Stop Cafe, and he was raving about the food there, and I wasn't surprised because I've eaten there myself, and it's always great. Have you found that people are still coming through there? And I remember when I was there, everybody wanted to come through, meet you, shake your hand. Is business brisk there, or how are things going with the cafe?
Well, that hasn't stopped. We still get quite a few people coming in because it's like a bucket list destination. Lots of people want to come in and meet me. In the last little while, I haven't been cooking. I've been trying to run the business, and I've been working on a few other things that free up some time so that I can work on some advocacy stuff. I've been
Mhm.
doing a lot more work for the Alberta Prosperity Project, speaking at
Yeah.
events, and I've taken up writing and doing a little bit of research thanks to our friends over at ChatGPT, which is fantastic. So yeah, people still come in a lot for that. Of course we're on a highway, right? So we're
Yeah.
very what's the word? Our business is determined by the quality of the weather. So in the
Right.
summer we're very, very busy. Like, it is
Mhm.
a madhouse there. In the winter, not so much. The winter gets pretty rough, but I'm hoping with some of these other things I'm working on the website and some other initiatives that it'll ease it up a little bit for the winter.
Speaking of summertime and the Whistle Stop, you put on some really cool events there. One of them, which I understand has become kind of an annual event, is your Canada Day concert and everything. How did you come up with that idea? And I know you really take pride in this, but going forward, are you going to switch it over to have more of an Alberta focus on it, or is it going to be Canada Day going forward?
It's been Alberta focus for 2 years now.
Yeah.
A little bit 3 years ago, but we don't call it Canada Day anymore. We call it Albertans Day. And
Ah,
even when it was
beautiful.
when we weren't calling it that, I called it Canadians Day. It was a day for Canadians. So we've
Yeah.
kind of taken that over a little bit.
Yeah. But it's a really cool event. In fact, that people should check out on Chris's social media. He has pictures and things like that. There's a concert and food and everything. But more than that, you've done some really interesting stuff. One that caught my eye, I believe this was might have been last year in April. You had a promotion where you were paying for people's gas when they came through and bought gas at the whistle stop, and you were trying to raise awareness about something. You want to talk about that a little bit? It was kind of an interesting
Sure.
stunt that you pulled.
Well, I'm a very strong advocate for an independent Alberta, and there's
Right.
many reasons why. If you check out my Facebook page or the Whistle Stop Facebook page, I'm often posting things. My website, whistlestoptruckstop.ca.
Hmm.
I write a blog and I blog about this stuff as well. So I'll just leave
Yeah.
that for now. But the
Yeah.
reason why I chose to do the fuel promotion, I wanted people to feel what it may feel like to live in an independent Alberta. No
Right.
excise tax, no GST. Fuel taxes are non-existent or at least reasonable. And I did that because we can talk about these things. You can talk about the facts all day long, but what I'm finding now is that a lot of people, they have an emotional barrier to this particular conversation of Alberta
Right.
independence. And
Right.
until you can do something to break that ice, to break through that barrier, it doesn't matter what facts or what education materials you give them. You could talk to your blue in the face. That emotional barrier is going to prevent them from thinking critically about what you're talking about. So
Yeah.
in this
Yeah.
way, when people were filling up for 80 cents a liter and everywhere else was saying it's selling at $1.40, it for some folks, it actually flicked a little bit of a switch and it got them to think, hey, is this real? Could it be like this? And then
Hmm.
it works on that emotional part. They have a positive emotional reaction to the potential of an independent Alberta, and it
Yeah.
lets the conversation
And interesting.
bloom.
Yeah. Almost like we hear about the frog in the pot, and
Yeah,
you just turned off the burner for a few seconds. But we
exactly.
actually, Michael, do we have a clip of Chris speaking at a town hall event in Tofield at an APP? Do you have that queued up?
Um, I don't have the
Okay.
video. I just have a still
Okay.
image.
Yeah. So here's if you want to show that. So
Yes.
this is Chris speaking at an APP town hall in Tofield, and he says we have to reclaim our sovereignty. Now, this is something that is very, very important to you right now, Chris. Is taking up a lot of your time and a lot of your heart and a lot of your mind, and you're very dedicated to this. And no one's paying you to do this. You're doing this as part of your civic duty because you really believe in the concept of a free and independent and prosperous Alberta.
Yes.
You want to talk about why this is so important to you, and just the experience of going around in our great province and talking with Albertans about a free and independent Alberta and what that could mean for Albertans.
Well, first of all, I do want to clear something up. I am compensated in one way. If you look at that picture, you'll notice that my shirt is somewhat tight on the bottom third. That's because I do get lots of cookies. They provide me with cookies. So that's
Well, I'm
besi-
glad that you came clean on that, Chris,
yeah,
because we
yeah,
wouldn't
you can.
want that to get out,
Well,
and get you
some people come for the cookies and they hear the
busted,
message.
as it were.
Yeah.
Actually, you look great there, Chris. Honestly, I wasn't sure. That almost looked like a young Gregory Peck, especially with the glasses. I thought I was looking at a promo to Kill a Mockingbird.
Well,
Anyway,
I'll take the young part, but your question about why I do that, as you know, Leighton, I experienced an event in my life in which the government literally came for me,
like a
and
series of events, really, wasn't it? It was
yeah,
like it was an ordeal.
it was, and it resulted in me being handcuffed and thrown in jail, and then I had crazy, a crazy sentence. Like people wouldn't believe. I was compelled to speak the government's speech before I could speak. My mobility rights were gone. I was on probation. Like I had $30,000 in fines. It was insane. So I experienced a time when the government came for me, and that motivated me to start digging, not only to find out how I can handle this, but who I am and what it means to be a Canadian. We always had this idea, especially on a schoolyard. You ask a kid, "Can I play with that?" or whatever. Oh, it's a free country, isn't it? That's the idea we have. I found
Yeah.
out that wasn't the truth, and so I decided, well, I need to do everything I can to make that the truth for my kids.
Hmm. Hmm. And of course, that started you on a path where, going back 3 years ago, really where I got to know you better was when the two of us were going around talking at these events. But you've really been doing this a lot over the past several months with people like Mitch Sylvester and Dr. Modry and Jeff Rath and others. Um, what's interesting to me about the Alberta independence movement, well, many things are actually, but one of the things that is very compelling about it is, and I want to get your take on this, is that a lot of people are trying to sort of compare it or draw comparisons to Quebec and Quebec separatism. But I see Alberta independence as more of a conservation movement, as more of a preservation movement. So knowing the people who are in it, people like yourselves and many others who work very hard to get the message out about why it's imperative that Alberta become its own nation, is that the people who believe in that and people like yourselves who are advocating for that are not about separating from Canada. You're about preserving and conserving this part of Canada that you love, that is your home, from basically an evil federal government and from tyranny. That's how I see the Alberta independence movement. Am I off the mark, or is that how you see things?
No, I would say you nailed it there. Quebec, Quebec, they've wanted to be independent or at least autonomous since the very beginning. It was a shaky relationship at the start, and nothing has changed. And it is interesting what Quebec's doing right now. Quebec is doing everything that they can to effectively become independent, just without even having a referendum. They've severed all ties to the monarchy by legislation, which means that the lieutenant governor is going to be gone. They have also just recently started talking about passing legislation that basically changes the relationship between the province and the federal government to say that we're already sovereign, we're independent, we're going to do our thing, and we're not going to listen to you. It's not like
Right.
they're not saying we're going to have a referendum and vote. They're saying, no, no, you do you, we'll do us, and we're not paying you, we're not doing anything. So it's very interesting what they're doing to preserve their heritage and their language and their culture. Alberta, you're right, Leighton. This isn't about equalization or overtaxation, although it is for some. It's deeper than that. It's Alberta and Saskatchewan and actually other parts of the West were put in this confederation under a structure and under a system that we can't chart our own course forward. We
Mhm.
can't influence the outcome of our own future. And
Right.
that's what the problem is for me.
Yeah, it's a cultural movement. And you talk about Quebec. This is really interesting. I saw a recent poll. About two-thirds of Quebecers want to stay in Canada. And why
Interesting.
wouldn't they? I mean, it's basically like, running your parents' house and having access to their bank account.
Mhm.
And for that matter, the bank accounts of all your brothers and sisters. So it's a really good deal for Quebec. It's understandable why they would not want to separate. But of course, for Alberta, the reality is very, very different. There's a great uh, historian and lawyer and thinker who named Sir Roger Scruton, and he lived in Great Britain. He died about 8 years ago of cancer, sadly, but he's one of the great conservative thinkers, and he wrote something that I think really applies to Alberta, Chris. I want to just sort of throw this at you. He said, "Conservatism starts from a sentiment that all mature people can readily share, and that is the sentiment that good things are easily destroyed, which is kind of what's happening to Canada, but not easily created." And so tying into this idea of Alberta independence, really what the people who are advocating for Alberta independence are doing is they're saying, look, Alberta is beautiful. Alberta is great. Alberta is our home. It's important. If we lose it, we're going to lose it forever. It might be destroyed as other parts of Canada have been. Arguably, Quebec has been destroyed. It's a shadow of what it was, for example, when I was a kid. But if we lose it, it's not going to be easy to create it again. And so we've got to conserve it. What do you think about that? Is that sort of on the right track? Is that the message that people like you and Mitch Sylvester and Dr. Modry are putting out there when you go to these events?
Yeah, I mean, think about the amount of work and sacrifice that had to be made and done to create what we have now.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
why would we want to just allow that to be for nothing?
Yeah.
Right? It's
And
preserving what the West is, I think, is important, because we've shown that. And what I say I use that term very loosely, because this was my ancestors that had,
right.
didn't have the
Yeah.
creature comforts that we have right now.
Yeah.
But there is something to that, and that means that we face whatever's coming at us, and we just handle it, and we
Yeah.
manage, and we adapt, and we overcome. That's what Alberta and the West is.
Right. But there, as part of the Alberta independence movement, this is something that many people miss. There is an urgency to it, isn't there? Because things are bad now, but all signs point to them getting worse. For example, I saw an article here that just recently that said nearly 1/4 of consumer goods firms, that's stuff like food and clothing, folks, are preparing to exit Canada. An industry CEO warns Parliament. A standing committee on industry and technology hears stark testimony that rising costs and stalled investment are pushing companies out of the Canadian market. And so what this means practically is that, ma and pa average and people like me, for example, are going to go to the grocery store, and we're just not going to have as many things on the shelves. In fact, we might not have foods that we're used to that are on the shelves, and some of them we won't even be able to afford. So this is a really serious problem. In other words, there's sort of the sun is going down, it seems, on Canada, isn't it, Chris? And this is part of the urgency behind the Alberta independence movement, isn't it?
Yeah, well, you look at some of the initiatives that are being implemented in Canada, they're not to our benefit. I mean, our federal government at one point was talking about banning plastics even in grocery stores.
Right.
Well, that's what's allowed us to have these foods in the first place, and why we have the diets we do is because we can package them, we can keep them fresh. There's so much. Even when you look at what the federal government's doing right now, when it comes to some of the bills that are going through Parliament, C2 and C9, and these bills that seek to undermine our personal or our individual liberties, for sure, it's really not going anywhere good. And I worry. I'm concerned that if we don't do something right away, we might be in a position where we're unable to do it lawfully. Right?
Yes.
It might come to a point where the federal government is going to say, okay, well, you guys want the Constitution open. We're going to open it. We're going to remove the notwithstanding clause. We're going to change some things and make it so that you go to jail for talking about being sovereign, right? We have to do something soon.
Yeah. And, and given that point, obviously, right now, I shouldn't say obviously, but the reality is that the Alberta Prosperity Project has put forth a motion in the Court of King's Bench of Alberta for a referendum on sovereignty, and by all accounts, this is going well. It's going forward. I saw a post, I believe it was on Jeff Rath's Substack, saying that that there was a recent appearance in court. Were you at that appearance, Chris?
No, I wasn't.
Okay.
But that was last week. They spent 3 days in court.
Right. So what is the status of that motion right now? Do you know?
Well, Justice Feasby is making his decision. So we're supposed to know something by the end of the year. And then I guess we go from there.
And what's happening with the Thomas Lukasik nonsense that he's been up to?
Oh man, he did a fantastic job, didn't he? I mean, we wanted a referendum, and he's got us our referendum. So he got 456,000 allegedly signatures in 3 months, which was impressive.
Right. Were
Um,
those the like Joe Biden auto pen signatures or?
it could be. I'm sure some of them are the same. Maybe some of them are written in a I don't know, whatever. Regardless, it's had the intended that it got the outcome that it intended to.
Right.
So now the provincial government, the ball's in their court, right? The
Yeah.
Citizens Initiative referendum, it says that the the government gets to pick what the question is, the
Right.
question and the time. So
Yeah.
now it's up to the premier. So, and if I was a premier, I'd look at this and say, okay, Justice Feasby already said that Thomas Lukaszik's question was a nothing burger because it doesn't have any constitutional outcome. If it's a yes, nothing changes. If it's a no, nothing changes. It would be a $20 million referendum for nothing. So if I was a
Right.
premier, I'd say, okay, well, if they want a referendum, we're going to give them a referendum, but a proper one, and it'll be a constitutionally valid question, and that
Right.
will have teeth and influence
Yeah.
the outcome of Alberta.
hmm Now, you bring up the premier, and there's been some mixed messaging in the media, at least the stuff that I've read. It's not clear whether Danielle Smith and her government are supportive of a referendum. I don't think that she supports independence. At least I was at a fundraising event. Actually, it was a fundraiser for her in Bonneville earlier this year, and she said pretty clearly that she doesn't support independence. That she wants to convince Albertans that there's a way forward for Alberta within Confederation. How do you see that? How do you see the stance that Danielle Smith has taken? Do you think that she's an impediment to independence, or do you think that she's going to remain neutral? What are your thoughts there?
I think it's less important what she wants and more important what we know about her. What do we know about Danielle Smith? She respects what Albertans want. She said that plainly many times. She said from the very beginning that she will do everything she can to prevent a referendum question on Alberta independence. And by saying that, she meant she'll do everything she can to repair the damage, to fix the problems, to right the wrongs so that we don't need
Yeah,
that referendum. But she
yeah,
said so many times, if it's the will of Alberta to do this, I will do that because that's my job.
right.
So I see it less important that she wants to stay part of Canada, and more important that she's actually put it on the people of Alberta to do their civic duty, get the question, answer it, and then she would do what the will of Alberta demands.
Okay. So when you see this recent pipeline deal where she's shaking hands with the evil one, Mark Carney,
Cringy.
and he's making all kinds of promises to Albertans.
Yeah.
How does that fit in with what you just said? I mean, it looks like she's making a deal with the devil. And I'm not really kidding about that, folks. We have this government in Ottawa is evil. It's populated by really evil people who are doing evil things to Canadians, especially the Albertans. So how does that fit in? What do you think when you see that, her shaking hands with Mark Carney on this pipeline deal? How does that fit in with all of this?
Well, globalist tyrant or not, he's the Prime Minister of Canada.
Yes.
And he is the one that's going to broker the deals between provinces that have grievances, and the federal government.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
in keeping with what she said she's going to do, she is pursuing those avenues.
Yeah.
That's what she's doing. We're
Yeah.
still pursuing our avenue because we know, and Leighton, you know, that it doesn't matter what the federal government says they're going to do for Alberta. They not only will they not do it, but they can't do it because you and I
Yeah.
both know that you cannot be a prime minister of this country and shift the balance of power from central Canada to the west and stay government. It's not possible.
Yes.
We've watched this how
Yeah.
many times.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
it's cringy to me to watch this happen. But at the same time, it's almost like we have to watch this fail. We're
Yeah.
talking a 15-year pipeline.
hmm
We don't need a 15-year pipeline. We need like a 5-year pipeline.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we have to let it expose itself for what it is, and it's a sham. It's empty words, just like
Yeah.
usual.
Yeah. The time, well, in a real sense, the federal government is almost they're almost driving the Alberta independence movement, aren't they? And
Yes.
in a strange sort of way. And it's odd that they don't see it. My theory is either they don't care. They're so indifferent to what's happening in Alberta, that that they simply don't care that they're actually driving us out of the country. But or do you think that that actually it's different, that they're actually thinking about, or they think that Alberta is important and it's important to keep them in the country? To me, that's unimaginable. What do you think about that?
Well, they do think Alberta is important in order to use the great trade of the prairies to build up their workshops and factories in the east and contribute to its prosperity in every conceivable way.
Yeah,
Right? That's what
yeah,
that is important to them. But the
hmm,
first thing you said was that they don't care. That's absolutely correct. And the reason they
yeah,
don't is because they control the media, they control the narrative. They have all the they have a like a huge majority in the House of Commons. They have all the senators. They have the support of the Supreme Court, and they can go and settle a an indigenous claim and pump a couple $1 billion into an area to gain support anytime they want. We saw that in Kananaskis a few years back.
yeah,
So they really don't care. They think that they think we're pushovers. They think we're
yeah,
stupid. They think we're not going to be able to do what we say we're going to do. And they're just acting like the threat isn't real.
yeah. It sounds pretty bleak the way you lay it out. Michael, I want to bring you into this. Now you live in Fort McLeod,
Mhm.
Alberta. Hopefully that doesn't now put you in any danger. But you live in Fort McLeod, Alberta, and you're part of the province. What are you hearing as you talk with your friends and neighbors and people at your church about Alberta independence? What's the buzz where you live?
Well, to be honest, it's it's not necessarily a mixed bag. There is a lot of vocal separatist, independent voices, and then there's not really much from the other side of staying in Canada. There's a few comments about it, and I would say that's probably from older people who are pensioners, and they're it's probably somewhat comfortable for them, and they have their routines down.
Yeah, yeah,
And there is the question of who divvies up what, and are they going to try and kill us, are I don't think Quebec has the same amount of value to Canada as as Alberta does
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
financially. And on another related note, we actually did get an online comment from someone named Charles. It's quite
Great.
lengthy, but he's actually talking about separatists, and who owns the resources.
Oh,
Yeah,
I know, Charles.
yeah,
And I would say, well, I think the deer in the mountain, and the lakes and the rivers would come with Alberta. I think that means underground also
yeah.
would come, and therein lies some people's fear of military action, uh, such as it is from the Canadian Army. Maybe they'd get the British involved,
Yeah.
but
Well,
yeah.
I would turn to Psalms 24 that says that the earth is the Lord's and everything in it.
Mhm.
Which brings me to my next point. Chris, we were talking recently with a brilliant young pastor, Alberta pastor named Nathan Zeckfeld, who leads a church in Grand Prairie, and he's very active on Substack, very supportive of Alberta independence. But he's asking some interesting questions, and that is, a lot of the discussion, if you go and you visit Alberta Prosperity Project, and if you look at what's posted, it talks a lot about the economic disadvantages of Alberta remaining in Canada. It talks about the advantages of a free and independent Alberta. But Nathan, Pastor Zeckfeld, he's asking the question: what kind of place would Alberta be? Would it be a good place? And he said, you're not going to have a good country if Alberta is a nation, if unless you have good people, good leaders, good people in leadership.
Hmm.
And the late Milton Friedman, a Nobel Prize winning economist, he said this. He says, it's nice to elect the right people, but that's not the way you solve things. He says, the way you solve things is by making it politically profitable for the wrong people to do the right things. And it seems to me we have the opposite in Ottawa. We have a political culture where I think many good people, or at least some good people, go into that place and they basically get converted to evil because that's the culture. It's a culture of corruption. So in a new and free and independent Alberta, How are we going to fix that? How are we going to make sure in this really rich and free and prosperous, beautiful new nation that we are going to have leaders who don't or aren't as bad and corrupt as what we have in Ottawa right now? How are we going to achieve that? What do you think?
There's only one way. Well, it's actually a two-part thing. The first thing is we need to have a constitution that outlines the government's relationship with us, not our
Right.
relationship with the government. First
Right.
and foremost, we
Yeah.
need to make sure that the foundational parts of democracy, the right to free speech, the right to defend yourself, are enshrined in the Constitution and cannot be changed by anybody, including the right to defend ourselves from government. But even deeper than that, it's not a political thing. This is a spiritual
Mhm.
thing.
Yeah.
You ask, how do we make sure we have good people? Well, we need to have people voting who vote for good things. And right now we don't have that because our society has been devolving for decades to a
Mm.
place where we now, and when I say we, I don't mean me, but society not only accepts the murdering of babies, they celebrate it and
Yeah.
have parties about it,
Mhm.
right? And that's an example I use because everybody understands what I'm talking about. But if
Mhm.
you have a society that has secularized and doesn't believe in God anymore, doesn't believe in absolute truth or morals, what are they going to vote for? They're going to
Right.
vote for evil. They're going to vote for tyranny. They're going to vote for things that take that leaders that take society down the wrong path. So, in addition to a strong constitution in independent Alberta, we also need to start being bold as men, for starters. And Leighton, you've been doing this for years.
Mhm.
I haven't. I've just recently started again. We have to be bold in sharing our faith and saying why we believe the things we do and doing it
Right.
unapologetically. For 30 years,
Yeah.
I've choked back my feelings on these things, and I didn't talk about it because you don't talk about religion or politics. It's impolite. But
Mm.
that's really what's going to change everything is when people like me and people like the viewers watching who find themselves not being bold and sharing what they know to be true, they got to
Right.
change the way they think and they got to step up and start doing it.
Yeah, I so agree. And I'm glad that you raised this point because if you look at what's happening in the United States, well, just this is Donald Trump put this out on his Truth Social. He said Christianity is facing an existential threat in Nigeria. He says the United States cannot stand by while such atrocities are happening there and in numerous other countries. And he's talking about places like United States, Canada,
Yep.
Great Britain. He says we stand ready, willing, and able to save our great Christian population. He's capitalized great Christian population around the world. So here we have the president of the United States saying he's not the only one. I know you know this, Chris, but J.D. Vance, Pete Hegseth, many other people in the Trump administration are very, very bold, as you just said, about talking about faith, talking about scripture. But the closest that we've come in Canada was Michael Barnett said something. He said Christ is King recently, which is very encouraging in Parliament. But I agree with you that we're going to see a change in our nation, whether that nation is Canada or Alberta, when we start to speak the truth. And if we can align the foundation of this new nation of Alberta with that truth, wow, what kind of country could that be? Really, the sky's the limit. One of the things that we hopefully would not have in that country would be an abomination as bad as what happened out at the Universal Ostrich Farm. I know you were watching this story, and I heard
Mm.
a couple different places on social media talking about this. This is a real sign of degradation in the Canadian Federation, isn't it, Chris?
Yeah, well, the idea that a bureaucrat can make a decision like that and just set aside someone's rights on suspicion of anything is absolutely, completely contrary to the idea of a free and democratic society.
It must have
Like,
reminded you of the Whistle Stop Cafe circa 2021.
it sure did. It sure did. And I found out very quickly that when these bureaucrats decide they're going to do something like that to someone, there is no group big enough to stop them. It's
Yeah,
just not going to happen. The only thing that can stop them is changing law.
yeah,
Or in this case, changing the Constitution so that we're protected from it in the first place, so that
Yeah.
it says to them, no, we're going to elect you and we're going to let you do these jobs, but you may not do this. And if you do this, we're going to defend ourselves.
Yeah. This reminds me of a quote from Thomas Jefferson. He wrote a lot of things, but he said, the issue today, he was talking about 250 years ago. He said, the issue today is the same as it has been throughout all history, whether man shall be allowed to govern themselves or be ruled by a small elite, just as you
Yeah.
were saying, Chris. And that's kind of, getting back at the heart of the independence movement in Alberta, is to get away from this type of tyranny of bureaucrats, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And to fix what we're in right now, I think it would be easier to start 4 new nations than to
Yeah.
fix what we have right now.
Yeah, I agree. And that's a big part of what's going on. I mean, and some of the people who are involved, and one of the things that I think one of the reasons why the Alberta independence movement should be taken very seriously, is some of the smartest, most principled people, the best people I know, are involved in it, including yourself, Chris. And I think that's a big part of the reason why it's grown so much from the time that you and I were going around, a few years ago, talking to small crowds. It's just grown tremendously, hasn't it?
Yeah, well, you said it before. The federal government has been the best salesman for Alberta independence that this country's ever seen.
Yeah. In the meantime, though, I wanted to ask you about a couple of things that you've been talking about, in social media conversations that are happening in Alberta right now. One of them that I heard you talking about is this new Bill 9, which is dealing with trans awareness and Trans Day of Remembrance. And this is where the Alberta government is passed a law where they're invoking the notwithstanding clause of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms to shield 3 previously passed laws from judicial challenges. And this is interesting because, of course, it gets at one of the big lies of society right now, which is the whole concept of transgenderism. And but it also it really ties into the concept of independence too. In other words, the types of rulings that we're getting from courts is a sign, or I shouldn't say it's a sign, but it's also part of what's driving the independence movement. Would you agree, Chris?
Yeah, 100%. Every time we see um, a, a, a federal court decision that undermines Alberta's authority, yeah, of course it drives independence. Bill 9. I want to point something out too. Not this national or international day of trans remembrance or whatever.
Yeah.
That's International Day of the Child. They actually hijacked that day and
Wow.
changed it to International Day of Trans
See,
Remembrance.
that's evil.
It
That is
is, and
evil. Yeah.
I'm thinking, like, sure, why don't we use it as a day of remembrance for all the children that
Yeah.
were propagandized into doing things to their bodies that now they regret, or they took their own lives because of it. That's what we should be remembering.
Hmm.
The abhorrent things that were done to kids in the name of progressivism, so that activists or people with these gender dysphoric conditions could feel more normal by changing the children to alter their reality. It's
Yeah.
disgusting.
Yeah. This is an interesting situation though from a legal point of view. And I'll try to explain it in this way. So this is how this is kind of a microcosm of how messed up Canada is right now. So the whole concept of transgender rights are totally a judicial creation, and they've done it by translating, transhumanism into a human right, which is a sleight of hand. In it for starters, it's a legal trick. It's a legal fiction. It's what you might call sophistry. Okay, but so what they do is they translate that into a human right. So then what happens is transgenderism becomes protected by the charter. And so, in order to protect kids, the Alberta government passes laws to protect kids. And in order to protect them, they have to opt out of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which protects life, liberty, and security of the person, in order to protect those kids from a judicially created right, which is transgenderism and transhumanism. Now, if you have followed all of that convoluted legal argument, you start to get a sense of what's wrong in the state of Canada. We've got a domineering globalist controlled government that's following leftist ideology. We've got courts who are articulating that ideology and enforcing it, and we have provinces who have to go to war and have to opt out of our constitutional law in order to protect children in our province. Really messed up situation, isn't it, Chris?
It is, and it just goes to show that what do our judges and our courts do? They interpret law, right?
Yeah.
And Alberta is basically saying, no, this is not how we want to. This is not how we want to interpret that. We're not going to. You guys can decide that you want to protect children's rights to be mutilated or parents' rights to mutilate their children, but as Albertans, no, we're not doing that. So this is a face-off between the people of Alberta and the courts. And then what follows eventually, what should follow is the will of the people would make its way into legislation via our MPs or our MLAs. But in this case, it won't happen because the federal government has already decided that they want to pursue that path in the name of progressivism. And Alberta, we're not there. So we simply say, no, we're not doing it.
Yeah. And while we're on the topic of legal stuff, I would be remiss if we didn't talk a little bit about your class action suit. And so by way of background, folks know that that I was involved in the case called Ingram a few years ago, where all the lockdown, well, I hesitate to call them laws, restrictions that were imposed by Dina Hinshaw were actually struck down. Jeff Rath and I worked in tandem on that case. But that wasn't the end of the story, because Jeff Rath, his law firm has actually filed a class action suit on behalf of Albertans. And this is to seek damages for business owners and other people who suffered losses as a result of those lockdown restrictions. And of course, Chris, being one of those people, he stepped forward. And he's what's called the representative plaintiff. He's the face of that lawsuit. And you're making some headway in that case, aren't you, Chris? You want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. It's been certified, but I do want to point something out. The beauty of the Ingram decision, when Leighton and Jeff argued that, what had happened previously is there was some NDP advocate kind of supporter groups that sued the provincial government and Dina Hinshaw to put masks back on children.
Yes.
And those lawyers argued that Hinshaw shouldn't have been allowed to do that because she didn't do it in the right way according to legislation. And the judge is like, okay, well, you're right, but so were all the other ones. So everything's illegal. And then Jeff and Leighton brought that into court, and that was just fantastic because of who caused that, right?
Yeah, we hoisted them on their own petard, as it were.
Oh man, the most perfect shining example of give them enough rope, right? And they took the rope and they did the work. Yeah. So the class action, it's been certified. Right now, it's tied up in back and forth. And Leighton, of course, you know how this is. Go to court for a couple of days. Oh, we need to talk about this later. Let's talk about it in 6 months. Come back in 6 months, talk about something else. It is
these cases move like glaciers.
Yeah, it is. The speed of law is. I don't think there is any speed in law at all. It's I don't know what to call it. But anyhow, it's slow and it's frustrating because Justice Feasby has already said that yes, we do have a claim because the government acted with malfeasance. That's the word he used. He also said that it's not, they can't plead ignorance because as legislators, they knew or ought to have known the legislation that they were using to enact those restrictions, and they didn't. Therefore, it's malfeasance. It's bad faith. They didn't do it right.
Yeah.
And so all of the evidence kind of to say is on the side of Alberta businesses. But the provincial government is kicking the proverbial can down the road while these businesses across Alberta lost. The average loss throughout that time was $186,000 each.
That is not chump change for small business owners, is it?
Yeah, that's a retirement.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And have you been surprised at the level of resistance you've had from the provincial government, given, that there was a court ruling which said that they broke the law? Have you been surprised by that, or is it something that that you and Jeff expected?
I'm not surprised because the stakes are very high.
Yes.
We're talking in the potentially tens of billions of dollars.
Yeah.
So no government in their right mind could treat that with anything less than their full attention and their
Yeah.
full weight of whatever they can do. Because at
Yeah.
the end of the day, the Alberta government is responsible to the Alberta taxpayer,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
so they're doing what they have to do. I think they probably could do more to streamline this, but
Hmm.
I'm a roughneck, and it's a
Yeah.
little above my pay grade.
Yeah. But you're hopeful that you're going to get to a point where you'll actually be able to litigate these claims. In fact, um, I know, I'm sure Jeff has given you similar advice, that the certification is a key threshold to get through. It's very unusual for a class action to go to trial. Most often, once you get past the certification phase, there's a lot of foot dragging, but eventually you're going to get that football across the goal line. It's just, those last 5 yards, you've
Yeah.
got it's hard to move the sticks. That seems to be kind of where this class action is at. Is that accurate, or what's your impression?
Yeah, I think so. And it's important to point out as well, like Scripture tells us that we shouldn't sue. We should settle our matters on the way to court. That's specifically
Right.
what it says.
Yeah.
And I know that this will be settled. It's
Yeah.
going to be settled. It's probably going to be settled in such a way that the Alberta government can just keep the money here in Alberta instead of sending it to Ottawa in the form of an equalization deduction or something like that.
Hmm.
But I hate to think that it's going to drag on to the point where more businesses fail, more time passes and people kind of forget what pain business owners endured. And then, it gets the government to a situation where people no longer are sympathetic to the losses business owners took. So then they're going to be angry at the government because, oh, we're just losing all this money. But it's a remedy that needs to be made.
Yeah, it certainly does. And I'm I'm very pleased to see that through that class action, business owners, aggrieved business owners like yourself, and my own wife, Jennifer, by the way, she had a store in Jasper that was destroyed in the same way that the Whistle Stop Cafe was. I'm pleased to see that there looks like there's going to be some justice for them. It also is looking promising in terms of professionals. The Alberta has brought forward a law called Bill 13, the Regulated Professions Neutrality Act. And of course, you and I have friends like Dr. Roger Hodkinson, or Dr. William Mackus, whose careers have been, really, really damaged um, by really persecution by their medical college. And it's looking as though maybe there are signs that the medical colleges and legal colleges and the law society are going to have to back off too. This is a good sign too, isn't it?
It is. Actually, I was just I did a podcast with John Carpe right before this,
Oh, did
and
you?
he was talking about the you talked about this as well. The
Hmm.
course that lawyers have to take on
Yes,
like wokeism. It's woke reprogramming, really.
it is. It's like a really bad grade 8 social studies course that just tells a lot of lies. It translates, it tells Canadian history through the lens of critical race theory, diversity, inclusion, equity, even some progressive sexual theory is in there. And the worst part about it, as an Indigenous person, is it paints Indigenous peoples not as fellow actors who participated in the foundation of our nation, who cooperated in it, who helped to build it. It paints us as complete dupes and victims. And I think this is maybe the greatest injustice that's been done to Indigenous peoples in Canada and throughout the world, is to paint someone as a victim is a very humiliating thing, isn't it?
It is, yeah, and I've had a couple people on my podcast talking about this too. That's the great lie that ushered in UNDRIP into
Yes,
Canadian law. It's the
yes,
reason why swaths of Burnaby are being property is being granted to tribal bands that really had no business doing this. The entire city
Yeah.
of Kamloops right now is under claim, and it was
Yeah.
all done based on the lie, the 215 lie from Kamloops, and
Yeah.
the lie that colonialism was the worst thing to ever happen to the Indigenous. Well, I'm sorry, but what we've built together in this country, it gives us everything we have right now. The
Yeah.
ability of all of us to live the lives we do.
Yeah.
And the lie against that is it's setting the entire country up to be completely deconstructed.
Yeah. This is a great point. And actually, it reminds me of a quotation from Thomas Sowell that I pulled. This is a great American thinker, maybe this one of the greatest public intellectuals alive. He said, "There are few ideas more dangerous than the notion that all your problems are caused by other people and their unfairness to you." He says that notion was the road to power for people like Stalin, Hitler, and Mao. And so when you read that, it helps to make us understand why the government in Ottawa is pushing this type of ideology, doesn't it, Chris?
Yeah, sure.
It's very tempting, right? It's a very seductive ideology just to be able to blame somebody else for all your problems. The way Goebbels and Hitler blamed the Jews, and we knew where that went. You know, and it, when in Stalinist Russia, the way they blamed everything on the Ukrainians, and that's how they got pogroms. And of course, this is happening in Canada today, isn't it? Whether we're blaming white people, we're blaming Islam people, or we're blaming trans people, we're all set off against each other, and we're not seeing who's the real enemy, right? And of course, that's a big part of what you're talking about as you go around. One of the interesting things, I don't want to make us sound like seers or anything like that, but I remember, I'm sure you remember, Chris, back in 2022, we were predicting that the federal government was going to do stuff through UNDRIP, like what's happening
Yes.
right now. We were warning people.
We're
They were
doing
going,
webinars
"Oh, wow,
about it.
that's never going to happen." Oh, well, here we are, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So we're coming up on the hour here, and folks, we've been talking with Chris Scott. Chris is how would you describe him? I would say that he's a public advocate on behalf of Albertans. So that's the best way I would describe him, and I mean that in the most complimentary way. And he's a person of tremendous courage, who's really devoted a huge part of his life to advocating on behalf of Alberta and the concept of a free, independent, and prosperous Alberta. And as we've learned tonight, some of you, maybe some of you didn't know all the things that Chris Scott is doing and has done. And I think I want to encourage people because Chris is an example of one of the people who's at the forefront of the Alberta Prosperity Project, which is fronting this independence movement. So he's one example of the kind of people who are. There are others, and we've talked about him here tonight. But if you have listened to Chris tonight and you've found out some of the things that he's doing that are happening, and if you're not excited, if you're not engaged, if you're not inspired, then I don't think you care very much about Alberta and your community. You need some time to reflect. And what I'm hoping is, having listened to Chris tonight and learn more about what he's doing and what's happening in Alberta, you're going to be excited and inspired to get involved. Maybe get out to some of these APP meetings, get out to some of these rallies, donate your time and money, get involved, find out what it's all about. That would be my best hope, my best prayer for the outcome of this conversation. Anyway, Chris, I want to throw it over to you for the final word before you get back to doing all the amazing stuff that you're doing.
Sure. Thanks, Leighton. And thank you for those kind words. It really means a lot coming from someone like you. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Well, I hope that you keep doing all that you're doing. And I hope that the Whistle Stop Cafe keeps operating and making great food and being a place where people can stop and really get in touch with Albertiana, if you will. And it's a piece of Alberta that's really important. And the fact that the Whistle Stop Cafe survived all of the persecution that it did, I think is really, really important. It says something about Alberta and Albertans, and not just this Albertan, but Albertans generally.
Mm-hmm.
So, Michael, I'll throw it over to you. You got some closing
Yes.
comments and a closing prayer for us?
Yes. Well, a fascinating discussion. Mystery cheese. I'm going to bring their comment in here. I prefer Gouda of naturally. Uh, but thank you, Mystery Cheese, for the love in the podcast. We appreciate that. And Deb also here had, uh, I just love being in control for a
Yeah,
moment. But here's another one of great things. And, we appreciate you,
yeah, we sure do.
AE Part J, however
Yeah,
you want to describe your name, self identify. And then, of course, Deb, we appreciate that as well. So it's been a great week. And then there's something from Charles here, but we'll just that's sorry, folks. I did not mean to fill up the entire screen with something like that.
Charles
But
is a deep thinker, isn't he?
what I don't,
He's sort of like
I
our
wouldn't go
version of
that far, but
Wes. On our show, Chris, we have a guy named Wes, and you have your Charles. They're sort of kindred spirits. I love these guys. They're really deep thinkers, and they add a lot.
I don't know if Charles is a deep thinker or just parrots
Well,
talking.
he is.
But
He is. I know him quite well. He's been to the
Yeah.
cafe, and it's. I'll talk to you about it after later. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah,
But I do
I
have one
love
more
these
thing if I
guys.
got time.
Sure, please do.
I just want to point something out. This is a conversation I had with my son recently. We have choices to make when things happen to us. We can choose to
Yeah.
say, "Oh, this person did this or this person did that, and it caused this to happen, and it's their fault." And that might be true.
Yeah.
I've come to realize that instead of doing that, personally, I'm going to say this happened, and I'm going to take control of it. It's going to be my fault, and that way I can solve this problem and influence the outcome. I can't change what other people do. I can't change what other people say, but I can change what I do. So when we
Yeah.
take control of these things and we stop being the victim, everything changes.
Yeah.
Everything changes. And that's how we're going to win this.
That's wonderful. I'm going to take that one step further. I'm going to quote something from scripture from 1 Timothy chapter 2, verse 5, which says, "For there is one God and one mediator between God and men, one, and that is the man, Christ Jesus." So, Michael, to you
Yes.
for our closing word,
Oh,
closing prayer.
yeah.
Thank you.
that is a great way to end off. And we actually have it here. So bear with me one moment so everyone can read it and be without excuse, we'll say. But
That's the space between action and reaction that Chris is talking about.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so, what a great conversation. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being here. And we appreciate it. And please share this out with your friends and networks. We get way more views after the fact.
Yeah.
So, thank you for that. And perhaps someone will come up with the idea that maybe Alberta and Quebec don't have to leave Canada. Maybe we can just balkanize that Toronto Ottawa corridor and cast them off into the outer darkness.
It'd be a shame to do that. It's such a beautiful part of the world.
Yes.
But, yeah. I mean,
Anyway, I can get to
desperate times call for desperate measures,
Yeah.
right?
I'm just trying to think out of the box here. Crazy like a fox, ladies and gentlemen. But thank you all. And I'll just close us off in prayer. And Lord, I thank you for the plans and purposes that you have for the nation of Canada and the people of Canada. May they, as it says in Isaiah 60, see a great light and be drawn to the brightness of the shining of our Lord Jesus. And we just pray for peace and prosperity for the people of Canada, the people of Alberta. And may we speak truth and life and reject lies and darkness. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thanks,
Amen.
Michael, for that. I want to thank you and also thank our wonderful guest, Chris Scott, for being with us and helping us to learn more about him and all he's doing as part of the Alberta independence movement. And thank all of you for tuning in. Please, if you found this conversation, this content meaningful, please share it. We really appreciate it. It's important that people learn more about what Alberta independence really involves, what it's really about. Not the rumors, not the innuendo, not what the Calgary Herald and the Edmonton Journal say, but what people like Chris Scott are saying, the truth about what Alberta independence means. So we hope that you've enjoyed this conversation, that it was meaningful, and that you'll share it widely. Thanks to everyone, and good night.
Good night.